Welcome everyone to our 2024 pre-application workshop. This will be a joint presentation with the Child Sex Trafficking Team and the Victim Services Program within the Public Safety Office of the Texas Governor. So thanks everyone for considering applying for a grant from our office and also for taking the time to view this very informative video that will help you to be better prepared as you apply for your application. So I want to take a moment and just introduce ourselves. So my name is Gianna Casper, and I am the administrator of the Child Sex Trafficking Team.
I'm Donald Stout. I'm the administrator of the Victim Services Programs.
I'm Caroline Butler. I'm the grant specialist for the Child Sex Trafficking Team.
I'm Kara Harrington. I'm the associate administrator for the Child Sex Trafficking Team.
And I am Jordan Jessic. I am the program coordinator for the Child Sex Trafficking Team.
Thanks, everyone. So what we're going to do during this presentation is really take you through how to apply for one of these RFAs that have just recently been submitted. So as you can see here in the short summary, we're going to provide you with an overview of the solicitations. We're going to let you know of some important dates, such as when to submit them. That's a very important date you want to pay attention to. And then we're also going to provide you with some highlights over the request for applications, talk with you a little bit about application development, offer up some helpful resources, and then we're just going to conclude with providing you some contact information and reminding you again of some of those very important dates. And so we're going to start right now with just giving you a quick overview of what the solicitations are for this upcoming year of 2024.
Hey, and this is Don Stout again with the Victim Services Programs. I'm going to quickly just give you all an overview of the General Victims Assistance Grant Program. Typically, this is funded out of the federal VOCA pot of money from the Department of Justice, which also funds a lot of what the sex trafficking team is doing as well. I just wanted to highlight that this program is eligible to any person who has suffered physical, sexual, financial, or emotional harm as a result of the commission of a crime. And the purpose of this program is to provide direct services to those crime victims, and eligible services are listed here at the bottom right corner of this slide. And again, I just want to reiterate that human trafficking is an eligible area of the General Victims Assistance Grant Program. We do serve adult trafficking victims, and that's both sexual and labor trafficking, or really any form of trafficking.
All right, thanks, Don. This is Janet again, and so I'm going to tell you just quickly about this RFA for residential and community-based services for victims of commercial sexual exploitation. So this is looking for projects seeking to provide the above programs for children and transition age youth who have experienced commercial sexual exploitation or sex trafficking. You should apply under this request for application. And so as you can see here, there are 5 different programs that we're seeking applications for. And I just want to note that, and I think we'll go over it a little bit in more detail, that this is children and transition age youth through age 24. The next one is the request for applications for commercially sexually exploited youth advocates. And so for this one, this solicitation is specific to CSA advocacy programs, projects seeking to provide other specialized programs for children and transition age youth who have been victims of commercial sexual exploitation should apply under the residential and community-based services for victims of commercial sexual exploitation RFA. So this one right here is specific to CSA advocacy. And if you notice here, this solicitation is for children and youth ages 0 through 17, and then also for transition age youth ages 18 through 24 years of age. And then our County Innovations grant this here is where we would solicit applications from counties for innovative projects that prevent, investigate, and or prosecute commercial sexual exploitation. And so one thing I wanted to point out here is that if you're applying for funds under this particular program, it's really important that you note that funds administered through this grant program may not be used in furtherance of activities to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute individuals for engaging in prostitution under Texas Penal Code 4302. So I know last year when this RFA went out, there was some confusion, and people who were looking to do those activities of investigation went ahead and put that in the application for this. And so I just want to let you know that this program may not do that. And then as promised, we just wanted to highlight some important dates for you guys to be aware of as you're submitting your application. I think you have those on the next slide. Okay, here you go. So as you are probably aware of by now, since you're watching this video, is that the funding announcement was released on December 12th, and as well as the opening date for the online system. And then the dates to submit and to certify an application are February 9th by 5 p.m. So you need to make sure that you not only submit it, but that you also certify it by 5 p.m. on that date of February 9th. And then the projected grant funding availability date would be October 1st of 2023. And then,
go
ahead.
So to reiterate, just it's very important to make sure that you do certify for all of these applications at 5. That can determine your eligibility otherwise.
Great. Thank you, Janet and Caroline and Dawn. Now we're going to move into the section of our presentation covering the highlights within each RFA or request for application. I'm going to tag team this. This is Kara speaking. I'm going to tag team this with Dawn. So first, let's talk about what the available funding is. Dawn, do you want to get us started?
Sure, thanks, Kara. And as I briefly mentioned in the opening slide, the General Victims Program is typically funded out of VOCA, as most of y'all are aware. But this last funding cycle, we actually got an appropriation from the legislature with ARPA funds to kind of help bridge the gap, to help supplement our VOCA funding since it's been going down the last few years. So y'all might actually see that your programs are being funded out of VC rather than VA. If it's VC, that just means you're getting funded out of federal ARPA dollars. VA means you're getting actual federal VOCA dollars. Programmatically and reporting wise, it makes no difference. It's just sort of an FYI that this is where the funds are actually coming from.
And then for the solicitations under our team, the child sex trafficking team's grants, residential and community-based services for victims of commercial sexual exploitation and specialized advocacy for commercially sexually exploited youth are in alignment with the same funding sources as the General Victim Assistance Grant, so also VOCA and also ARPA. In addition, we have some state funds available. So County Innovations to Address Commercial Sexual Exploitation is funded through state funds. And then we also, as a team, have an allocation from the state for the Child Sex Trafficking Unit, which is otherwise known as the Child Sex Trafficking Team. And that fund source allows us to be able to fund state-serving programs, programs that do not provide direct victim assistance, but further in the anti-trafficking effort in the state.
Real quickly, eligible organizations for general victims, it's state agencies, which includes public universities as well as private universities, ISDs, American Indian tribes, COGS. We do see primarily nonprofit corporations, as well as cities, counties, other local units of government.
And then for the residential and community-based services application, the eligible organizations are identical to that of the general VOCA RFA. For specialized advocacy for commercially sexually exploited youth, the eligible organizations are more limited. So just nonprofit corporations, and that could include hospitals and faith-based organizations, counties applying to provide direct services to victims only, Native American tribes, and units of local government. And then other local governmental agencies should apply through that associated unit. And then for our county innovations to address commercial sexual exploitation, the only eligible group is going to be a Texas county. That's the only entity that may apply.
And all applications that are considered through our office must come through our eGrants online system, and the web address is here on the slide. It's just egrants.gov.texas.gov, and y'all will all grant officials will need to have active eGrants accounts to be able to get that submitted and certified to us. General victims applications at the regional level, and actually I think a lot of the child sex trafficking applications as well will be scored by the local councils of government. So all individuals who are interested in applying for general victims need to contact their COG to make sure that they are in attendance to any workshops or committees or scoring workshops that the COGs might be putting on. And below at the very bottom of the slide, you'll see the web address for the COG, the TARC as a whole. And also feel free to contact us if you need any help getting hold of those folks. And as mentioned before, funding announcements are currently open. I know we've mentioned this twice already, but we can't rate enough. Yet they need to be submitted and certified by 5 p.m. Central Time on the 9th of February. Not certifying will mark y'all as ineligible. It's a two-step process. Y'all can submit, but then the authorized official must certify as well to make it route to us. And projects must have a start date of 10/1/23, and they cannot exceed 12 months. And this is again for general victims. I'll defer to child sex trafficking for their project periods, but I think they're similar. And again, please check with your COG for any mandatory workshops.
Yes, for the child sex trafficking team grants, those follow the identical fund periods and information you see here.
Perfect. Thanks, Kara. And for general victims, I think you'll see this as a trend across most of our funding categories, but we have a minimum of $10,000, but we don't have a maximum. Currently, you'll see we don't have a match requirement. It's been nice because OVC, the federal agency that oversees VOCA, has given us match waivers during the pandemic. We do expect that to go away, once the pandemic has officially ended, but we are still currently operating under the federally designated pandemic, which means we don't have to provide match. So, enjoy while we have it, but once we're past the pandemic, there will be a 20% required match for VOCA funds.
And then the same holds true for our residential and community-based services application. Minimum 10,000, no maximum, and no match requirement. For specialized advocacy, for our CSA advocacy programs, the minimum funding level is 25,000 and the maximum is none. And then there's also no match requirement. I do want to point out a note that we have in the RFA. Applicants are encouraged to apply for what they need to meet and maintain the minimum standards of a CSA advocate program. CSA advocate programs have specific requirements that they must meet, and we want to make sure that our grantees are able to honor those standards. And then similarly, we also encourage or caution to only apply for funding that can be responsibly expended in the grant period. And then for county innovations, again, 10,000 is the minimum, no maximum, no match requirement.
I'll quickly go over all the eligible activities for general victims, and you'll also, during the application phase, you'll see these listed out on the activities tab as well. As you can see, crisis services, forensic interviews, legal advocacy, multidisciplinary teams and case coordination, peer support groups, professional therapy and counseling, program evaluations and assessment, protective order assistance, shelter, victim offender meetings, and transitional housing. Again, these are the eligible activity areas that y'all can do under the General Victims Assistance Program. When you select these activity areas, you'll just go in and kind of give us a description of what y'all are going to be doing, more specifically, and that'll trigger some measures. I believe Caroline's going to get more into the weeds on this in the coming slides, but yeah, I just want to give you all a quick overview of eligible activities.
Thanks, Dawn. So for the residential community-based services for victims of commercial sexual exploitation, the eligible activities are community-based drop-in centers, emergency residential placements, long-term residential placements, specialized trauma responsive behavioral health services, and innovative services for commercially sexually exploited persons. CSEP is the abbreviation for that. And I would like to note that only one program type may be selected for each application. Organizations seeking to address multiple program types should submit multiple applications. So if you choose to serve both community-based drop-in centers and emergency residential placements, each activity will require a new application. For specialized advocacy for commercially sexually exploited youth, we have 2 new eligible activities. So you do have the option for advocacy for children, and we do have the option for advocacy for transitional age youth. You do have the option to choose one or the other, but if you choose to do both, you can include it on a single application. For county innovations to address commercial sexual exploitation, the eligible activities are targeted investigation and prosecution, CSEP, program evaluation and assessment, and innovative programs additionally with CSEP.
This is Kara again. I'm going to talk about some program-specific requirements that we have for grants administered by the Child Sex Trafficking Team. We encourage you to please read the RFAs very carefully for a full list of requirements, as well as those listed in e-grants, but highlighting these because of their importance. Community support. We expect all grantees or applicants to have a network of support for their project in their city, community, region that they cover. And to justify those, we expect to see letters of support attached to the upload files tab of eGrants. We also expect all grantees to adhere to the guiding principles of our team. Those are listed in your RFA in detail. And then we also mention in each RFA the use of the commercial sexual exploitation identification tool. This is a screening tool that's utilized across the state, and grantees are expected to utilize it in some way. So details are provided in the RFA, which is why we say as applicable here. Then Jordan, would you like to talk with us about measures?
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Jordan Jezik, and I am the program coordinator with the Child Sex Trafficking Team. I will be your point of contact for all things performance measures throughout your grant cycle. If you are a returning grantee with us who has submitted custom measures through our Excel template spreadsheets before, we are happy to announce to you that we will no longer have those. Our Office of the Governor defined custom measures will now be entered directly into eGrants. With that being said, you will want to pay close attention to the instructions written out in the RFA to complete the measures section. Program-specific requirements regarding measures. The performance measures listed on the Measures tab of eGrants are tied to an activity as selected by the applicant on the Activities tab. Please carefully review the instructions provided in the RFA before entering the data into the Measures tab of eGrants. An important thing to note when completing this section is that you do not have to enter in a specific value for each measure. However, some are required as noted in the RFA. With that being said, measures should reflect an applicant's best estimate of the level of activity they expect to perform during the grant period. For measures that do not require data estimates, applicants will be directed to enter a value of 1. On this slide and the next slide, we're going to take a look at examples of both the instructions in the RFA, and the measures as they look embedded into eGrants. So for this slide, you will see examples of the output and outcome measures for emergency residential placements that you do have to enter in specific values. And then in red on the screenshot, you will see that you will need to enter in 1 for all measures that don't require a specific value. This slide contains a screenshot of how the measures will look as they're embedded into eGrants. For returning grantees with us, this will look a little bit different because you before had an Excel spreadsheet, but this should make it a lot easier for you to not have to upload so many documents for us. For instructions, specifically on how to complete the custom measures with definitions, if you're returning grantee with us, the custom measures instructions used to be found on the Excel spreadsheet template, but now you can find the instructions linked directly on the measures tab within eGrants, which you can see from these screenshots. The instructions on the measures tab will only pertain to specialized CSA advocacy, as well as emergency and long-term residential and community-based drop-in centers. For progress reporting, grantees may be required to report fund-specific progress report data and must follow the progress reporting instructions provided by the Public Safety Office. Grantees will be required to provide quarterly summaries that articulate program achievements and include de-identified client progress or success stories. Grantees are also expected to report staff turnover and address problems experienced during the quarter. Quarterly summaries will be submitted in the progress reports general tab of eGrants, and Caroline Butler will be your point of contact for that.
This is Kara speaking again. Please read the RFA for the RFAs and for the grant that you are applying for in detail over the prohibition section. That's going to give you a large list for each RFA to make note of, but here we're just listing county innovations to address commercial sexual exploitation because these prohibitions are different than the other applications. Janet mentioned this one at the top: investigation, arrest, detainment, or prosecution of individuals for engaging in prostitution selling under Texas Penal Code 4302 is prohibited. Construction, renovation, or remodeling, law enforcement equipment, that's standard use, salary of judges, lobbying or advocacy activities with respect to legislation or to administrative changes to regulations, whether conducted directly or indirectly, and any other prohibition imposed by federal, state, or local law or regulation. And then I'm going to turn it over to Caroline Butler to take us through application development.
All right, thank you, Kara. So I will begin with the profile tab, and just these are a few details that I would like to make note. On the profile tab, you will be inputting your agency information, and when you are filling out the zip code, please make sure that you are including the 4-digit postal code as well. And then you also need to reflect the date as follows: 10/1/2023 to 9/30/2024. So when you are filling out the profile tab, you must assign 4 grant officials. Please make sure that when you are assigning these officials, they already have a registered account in eGrants. There must be at least 3 different people within your organization. The grant writer can be the same person as any official. The roles of these positions that you will be assigning are the authorized official. This is the person that is authorized by the governing body of your organization. They typically are county judges, mayors, chairman of nonprofit boards. The financial officer is required to be the chief financial officer or designee by the grant agency. The FO must be an agency employee. They cannot be a contractor. As well as the project director, they must also be an employee of the grantee agency. The next tab that you will complete is the grant vendor tab. This is where you're going to include your agency type, your FEI number, your UEI, which is the identifier when you register on SAN.gov. This is where also you will get your SAM expiration date. Additionally, there are required documents on this tab. You will include the Texas Payee ID application, your direct deposit form, and IRS W-9 form. Please make sure that you are only uploading these documents to the grant vendor tab and not the upload files tab, because if your grant is subjected to a PIR, that information will be included in a PIR. The next tab you will complete is the grant narrative tab. I ask that you be very thorough. This is where you're able to thoroughly make a case for your project. And questions that it will include are culturally competent victim restoration, civil rights liaison, the project abstract, the problem statement, supporting data, project approach and activities, capacity and capabilities, performance management, target group, evidence-based practices, response to substance use disorders, and please just again ensure that these are detailed. I would like to make note that we have a new text box including the response to substance use disorders. This will only apply to residential and community-based services and specialized advocacy for CSA. Next, you will also fill out the activities tab. This is where you're going to select the appropriate activities relating to your agency's project. Please be very detailed in the activity area, and this will be a dedicated 100% that needs to add up to 100. So if you are doing 30% advocacy and another 30% to a different activity, that it needs to add up to 100. For each activity, you will need to give a description and ensure that any activities included in this tab are also reflected onto the budget. Additionally, when you create the activities tab, measures will be auto-generated by depending on what activity you are selecting, and you will find that on that activity or on the measures tab. On the measures tab, you will, sorry, Kara. On the measures tab, you will input anticipated output performance measures as well as input anticipated outcome performance measures. So the next tab we will be filling out is the budget tab. And so these are the different categories that you could be creating line items under. For personnel, the expectation is to have the employee name, their position, a brief description of their project duties, and an annual salary breakdown, including their fringe benefits. For contract lines, please make sure that the hourly rates do not exceed $81.25 per hour or $650 per day. Contract rates should be included in the budget description and include the name of the contractor and what activities they will be contracted for. For equipment, this is a threshold of $5,000 per unit price. Anything with a unit price less than $5,000 should be categorized under supplies unless otherwise indicated by your agency's policies. Typically, I do see vehicles in the budget for equipment, and vehicles that are 100% funded by grant funds must be used 100% for grant related activities. If the agency intends to use the vehicle for unrelated activities, a cost allocation plan must be utilized. Vehicle line items also require the make and model of the vehicle in the line item description. For travel and training, in-state registration fees and training, please ensure that you include the name of the conference, the location of the conference, the specific dates of any training, number of attendees in your organization that will be attending, justification on how this training will benefit the project, and all estimated costs. Hotel costs include the estimated unit cost of a hotel room for one night times the number of nights and the number of rooms needed. Registration fees, please include the cost of the registration and the number of attendees. Meal costs, per diem rate, daily rate times the number of days times the number of attendees. And transportation costs will be the mileage rate times the number of miles and the number of cars needed. For out-of-state registration, please include the same that you would for the in-state training. Line item descriptions will also require a justification on why out-of-state conferences is a reasonable cost to apply to the grant, as it, and more so, is there a comparable conference in the state of Texas that they could be attending. For supplies and direct operating expenses, a general breakdown of what is being purchased, including a unit number, a unit price, and how the item will be supporting the project. If you are including rent on the budget, please also include the cost per square foot of the space in the line item description. For indirect costs, if the applicant has an approved indirect cost rate from either their federal or state cognizant agency and wishes to charge the IDC to the grant, the applicant must identify the IDC rate and upload a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement to the upload files tab to support that rate. If an applicant does not have a negotiated rate, they may claim up to 10% of the modified total direct costs under the de minimis option, and the calculation is below. Personnel plus contracts up to $25,000 per contract, plus travel training, plus supplies. You will not include equipment costs or cost of space, so make sure that when you are adding supplies to omit the cost of space. If you choose, since we do have match not required, but if you do choose to include match, cash match expenditures are actual non-OOG cash spent by the grantee on eligible items included within the approved e-grants budget. In-kind match must be donated by the grantee to the grantee by a third party. Volunteer time on grant-related activities may be used as in-kind match, but rates must be consistent with those paid by the grantee for similar work and may not be provided by a paid employee or a board member. So you will also be filling out the source of match tab. You will be including the source of your match, and most of the time you will see general funds, donations, fundraisers, unrestricted funds. And I want to note that the source of match may not be in another federal source of funds. You will also be filling out the documents tab. This will include the contract compliance. If you do have contracts listed on your budget, you will be required to fill out the contract compliance. This is how you're going to explain how they are remaining compliant. The fiscal year should amount to a full year. This doesn't have to necessarily be our fiscal year, but it should include a full year. All questions on this page should be answered. The eGrants Victim Services tab will not apply to all grants. However, if you do have this tab, please ensure that the type of crime amounts to 100%. If you are applying for VOCA funding specifically and your project is unable to utilize volunteers, upload a volunteer waiver to the Upload Files tab on eGrants, making a case as to why your agency is unable to use volunteers. If the volunteer waiver is not uploaded to the Upload Files tab, a fund hold will be applied if the letter is not present. VOCA applicants must assist potential recipients in seeking crime victim compensation benefits in order to be eligible for VOCA. Only nonprofits will see this tab. It's the fiscal capability tab. All questions should be answered and an explanation should be answered to the corresponding text box if any responses were no. So in addition, I would like to make note of this tab. When I go through the application processing phase, you will see notes left by me, and this is a page that I recommend utilizing. You'll find it under the summary grant issues tab, and this will include application errors, required entries, or invalid entries, and it's basically a checklist for things that we need to address on the application. The next tab that you will need to be familiar with is the Upload Files tab. This tab is where you will be uploading a resolution, an NGO or CEO certification form, the volunteer waiver, if applicable, the cybersecurity training confirmation, MOUs, letters of support, and other required documentation. Please note the ones that do have asterisks next to them. Failure to upload these documents that are required will result in a fund hold on the grant until satisfied. So when it comes time to submit the application, this is a two-step process, as we mentioned. You must submit your application and the authorized official must certify the application, and only the AO can certify this application. Failure to certify your application will deem your application ineligible.
Thank you, Caroline, so much for taking us through that detail. Very helpful. So now I'm going to just talk briefly about resources that are available on the eGrants website, which you see below egrants.gov.texas.gov. You will find on the left-hand bottom column of the website these 3 resources: Guide to Grants, eGrants User Guide to Creating an Application, and eGrants Financial Management Guide. We encourage you to please consult all 3 of these as you move forward with your application. Most questions will be answered there. Additionally, we encourage applicants to look at some open source resources to help develop your budgets or your narratives to inform cost of living, what would be an appropriate salary structure, right? Or what are the best practices as listed in the question on the narrative tab that are supporting your work. So we encourage you to look at these 3 resources as well as some open source resources to inform your grant. Janet?
All right. Thanks, everyone, for providing such a detailed account on how to apply for a grant with our office. And I just want to say thanks to all of you who are taking the time to utilize this tool and really absorb the information here in this video. Please keep it and save it, refer back to it as often as you need to, so that you have a really good understanding of how to do this application. Also, again, as was mentioned by partners on this presentation, is to read your RFA thoroughly. And again, utilize the resources mentioned here by Kara so that you can present your strongest application. We are very excited to hear from you guys, to see your innovative ideas, and to also see your commitment to serve children, youth, and also other adults throughout our state. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Just want to point out again the important dates to remember. So screenshot this if you need to for easy reference, but make sure that you pay attention to these deadlines. You must have it submitted and certified again by the 9th of February by 5 p.m. Central Time. And then here is contact information for you. So if you have some questions outside of what has already been explained in this, or just need a little bit more detail, please reach out to the team here at the governor's office to help you with that. So you can see here for victim services, you have Don and his team, his grant administrators, as well as anything specific to the child sex trafficking team grants. Please feel free to reach out to Caroline Butler. And again, thank you so much for your time. And we are very excited to receive your applications for 2024.